here we are on question 19 with another video. And here we're going to continue with more slope formula. And you may have noticed that in my first video, in my points, I only had positive numbers, okay? And that was just to help you get used to the formula. But what if the x and or y coordinate is negative? Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but you're just going to see there's some, details to be careful of when we're dealing with negative numbers. So here's example number 3. Okay, so we go through the same steps here. So I'm still going to say, okay, this is x1 and y1. This is x2 and y2. And I'm going to plug into my formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2, 1, minus three. Sorry, this is where I'm confusing myself. I'm just misreading this. Sorry about that. y2 minus y1 is 1, y2 minus, not 3, right? But it's minus y1. So that's negative 7. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm putting the negative 7 in parentheses. Why did I do this? It's not really necessary. It's not required. You could have just written like this. But sometimes what you'll see is that negative numbers like this are put in parentheses, and the reason is just to make it easier to see, right? Because here you don't want to get lost with these two negatives, so sometimes we do this just to make it like, oh, remember this is a negative number, and you just kind of use the parentheses to sort of highlight that it's negative, but it doesn't actually mean anything. Okay, and then we have on the bottom we have x2 minus x1. Okay, so now I've plugged in. So now my job is to add or subtract here. Now what I need to remember is that when I have minus a negative like this, minus a negative, that becomes plus. This becomes 1 plus 7. It becomes 1 plus 7. Okay, now this down here, I'm just going to recopy, just so you can kind of have this step in your notes, right? This double negative minus negative becomes positive. And on the bottom, this is still negative 4 minus 3. Now, 1 plus 7 becomes 8. Negative 4 minus 3. So this is, we have 4 negatives and another 3 negatives. Okay, that's a total of 7 negatives. That's a total of 7 negatives, right? There's no positives here to cancel anything out. So negative 4 minus 3 says I'm 4 feet deep in a hole and I'm digging 3 feet deeper. Now I'm 7 feet underground. Okay, so this is what I get. And now I do need to simplify. And what we like to do is evaluate and see like, okay, is this going to be a positive or a negative number? And I say it's positive divided by a negative. So that's negative, right? Positive divided by negative is a negative. And can I simplify this? No, there's no number that I can divide both 8 and 7 by. So this just stays 8 over 7. But my answer here is negative 8 over 7. Negative 8 over 7. Okay, let's do one more example. Negative 2, negative 4. And negative 6, negative 6. So now we have all these are negative, so we just got to be really careful. So here's my x1 and my y1, my x2 and my y2. And remember, I don't ever skip that step. Why? Because if you plug in wrong at the beginning, then all your work is wrong. And what a waste. So take that extra 5 seconds and just actually write the labels. Okay, so ready? y2, negative 6, minus y1, negative 4. Okay, now remember, I can write the parentheses here if I want, but it's not necessary, right? It just helps me to see it better. x2, negative 6, minus x1, negative 2. Okay, this minus a negative becomes positive, so this becomes negative 6 plus 4, and on the bottom, this becomes negative 6 plus 2, right? In both cases, I had this double negative, right? And you can kind of think of it in a couple different ways. Some people like to sort of visually just like make it into a big plus sign like this. You can sort of visually take this that negative sign and kind of turn it and make it into a plus sign. But when you have two negatives right next to each other, it does become positive. Not like this. See, this was two negative numbers. These negative signs weren't right next to each other. That didn't become plus. It's only when we have minus and negative and the two signs are right next to each other. Okay, but let's take a look at this math. This is negative 6 plus 4. So I have 6 negatives and 4 positives. So if I just kind of draw that out real quick, that's 6 negatives and I have 4 positives. So this cancels and becomes 0. And I'm left with 2 negatives. So that's negative 2 over. This is 6 negatives and 2 positives. So that becomes 0, that becomes 0, and I'm left with 4 negatives. Okay, now what happens here? So first I'm evaluating, okay, what sign is this going to be? And I notice this is a negative divided by a negative. Well, negative divided by a negative is a positive. So this slope is going to be positive. And then I notice I can also divide by 2 on both the top and the bottom. So I end up with a slope of positive 1/2. And on this page, you can go ahead and set up your next few problems, right? We're on page 19 here. Sorry, number 19 here. But you can go ahead and set up 20. Leave yourself 2 lines, 21. Leave yourself 2 lines, 22, 23. And we're going to solve all the way up to 25 on this page. And you might be a little bit tight for space at the bottom, but you're going to do problems 20 through 25 on this page, okay, which is page 56.